If you asked a random person to tell you a story from the Bible, most likely you'd hear about one of the great miracles. God speaking creation into existence, God rescuing his people from slavery through plagues and parted waters, defeated giants, healed bodies, maybe walking on water. The biblical story is big and remarkable and full of miraculous stories of God's faithfulness and glory. These stories are so impressive, it can be easy to feel like our unimpressive lives don't fit into the grandness of the Bible's story. I'm an average pastor with a wife and 2 kids and a dog and a car payment. How does this life fit into the vastness of the story of God and his people? I want to introduce you to a story about a woman named Ruth. Tucked between the pages of Israel's mightiest warriors and their most powerful kings is the simple story of an unnoticed and desperate woman. Ruth was not an Israelite. She wasn't born into the family of God. Instead, she was a Moabite, a neighbor of Israel's. Yet she found herself married to an Israelite husband. In fact, she was one of 2 Moabite women married to 2 Israelite brothers. But Ruth's story comes to our attention upon the death of both Israelite brothers and their father. Ruth suddenly found herself a widow, with only her widowed mother-in-law, Naomi, and her widowed sister-in-law for support. No one would have blamed them for returning home and starting over. But instead, Ruth decided to stay with Naomi, while her sister-in-law returned to Moab. Naomi pleaded with her, "Go back to your mother's home, and may the Lord reward you for your kindness to your husbands and to me. May the Lord bless you with the security of another marriage." But Ruth replied, "Don't ask me to leave you and turn back. Wherever you go, I will go. Wherever you live, I will live. Your people will be my people, and your God will be my God." While God was busy shaping nations and calling heroes, fighting wars and anointing mighty prophets, he also recognized the faithfulness of a Moabite woman named Ruth. Her heroic moment, a humble commitment, and a quiet conviction. Your God will be my God. Her story would have never made headlines, but yet here it is, recorded forever in our Bibles. Our world still pays little attention to lives like Ruth's. Our attention is on celebrities and influencers, politicians and power brokers. Even as Christians who know that God has recognized each of us individually. Yet we so easily assume that his best attention, interest, and energy is on the leaders and pastors most visible in the world, the noteworthy lives of faith. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Samuel, David. And yet Ruth's name manages to make its own divine appearance, like a stake driven into the middle of the story, anchoring our attention into the way of God's attention. His eyes are not distracted by flashing lights or massed crowds. He sees even Ruth in the rushing movement of his redemptive story. Ruth's story is told with deliberate patience. We watch as God intervenes and cares for her in life-changing ways. There's nothing too miraculous about her story, at least not in the way we tend to talk about the miraculous. But if you take your time with her story, there are signs of God's hand in almost every sentence. God welcomes her, provides for her, blesses her, sustains her, and lifts her head in hope. But God doesn't just pour out blessing on Ruth. He also uses her to bless so many around her. Ruth becomes not just a recipient of God's attention, but a channel by which God's presence becomes tangible to a whole community of followers. Ruth becomes a source of restoration, restored herself, but also a restoration to those she loved and cared for. Who would have predicted a widowed woman from a pagan nation would become the hero of an Israelite family? But then again, who could have predicted the ways God has and is using you to restore others? The miracle of God's presence and restoration doesn't erase the pain and struggle Ruth faced. Her story never slips into sentimentality or cliche. But in the attention of God, there is no life, no person too small or unnoticed to not taste of his miraculous restoration. It's as true today as it was then. No person slips between the cracks. No life goes unnoticed. God is the restorer of everyone who has experienced pain, fear, and hopelessness. God is the restorer of family and hope and life in ways none of us could have predicted. And for Ruth, that restoration all began with a simple willingness to press on by faith. Listen.